The next day, the Lang and Adler dorms have a joint class in the forest. Mash wonders what they will be doing for the class, and they notice Barrett, who makes a racket about how he is the main character. Mash thinks he is weird, but Barrett thinks he is a side character, looking at his appearance. But Lemon arrives, asking Mash if she can tag along with him. Barrett gets annoyed and spits on Mash. He starts freaking out about how he is getting attention from a girl, thinking that it's because of people like him that he can't get a girl himself, wanting to join the bureau so he can get rid of all the hot guys in the world. But the group just ignores him, and he gets even more annoyed. However, the professor appears, explaining their next class. They are tasked with taking out forest scorpions and retrieving the stone from their heads. Regular stones are worth a bronze coin, but the stronger scorpions have a square stone, which is worth a silver coin. The professor sends them off, and Mash is aiming for a silver coin. He is suddenly approached by a student named Silva, who witnessed his feat during his duello match, but reminds him he is nothing as he attacks Mash with a pillar of iron. The professor breaks things up, and Silva claims they were just messing around. Mash glares at him, but Lance ends up stopping him, revealing that Silva is actually a year older than them, but since he was a troublemaker, he was held back for a year. Lance warns him to avoid Silva, but Mash is just glad his cream puff didn't get squished. They head into the forest, and Lance thinks they should work together, but Mash disappears because he happened to zone out. He runs into Barrett, who starts freaking out, but he just slaps him. Barrett wants to fight him, but they suddenly hear a scream as we see a girl being attacked by another student. She cries for help, and there is an explosion that defeats the boy. The girl thanks Barrett for saving her, and he starts to freak out. He tries to act cool, but when she grabs his hand, he starts to lose it. Meanwhile, we see a defeated scorpion, as it seems Silva has already obtained a square stone, but it seems there is something else he is after. The girl thanks Barrett once again, and their knees touch. Barrett is overwhelmed, and starts slamming his head into the ground. But we learn that the girl is using magic to charm him, magic that makes anyone who finds her attractive to fall madly in love with her. She tries to work her magic on Mash, but he says he didn't really do anything. The girl is shocked her magic isn't working on him, so she tries to use more energy, grabbing his hand, but it still has no effect on him, leaving her devastated. Barrett wonders about her situation, and the girl explains she is being threatened by Silva, who is forcing her to use her unique magic. Barrett swears to help her, and at that moment, they are suddenly attacked, and Silva appears. Barrett decides to fight him to help the girl. He attacks with a barrage of fireballs, ending things with a giant explosion. Meanwhile, we see Finn and Lemon clinging onto Lance as they cry for help, but he wonders if Mash is okay, since he is being targeted by Silva. Barrett thinks he has won, but as the smoke clears, we see that Silva protected himself with his iron. He attacks Barrett with his pillar, and knocks Mash's cream puff out of his hand. Silva continues to taunt them to fight him, while Mash is just stunned by the loss of his cream puff. Barrett starts to get worried, thinking there is a big difference in their magic power. He thinks Mash is no use, so he thinks it's all up to him to save the girl. Silva starts taunting him, saying his magic was weak and calling him a letdown. So he decides to give them a chance, saying if he can take 5 of his attacks, he will leave the girl alone, even wagering a silver coin in accordance with the rules of the academy. The girl thinks it's a ridiculous deal, saying he could get seriously injured, but Barrett accepts it, thinking he can withstand 5 hits. However, Silva says that Mash is also a part of it, so he also needs to agree. Barrett says Mash isn't involved, but Silva insists that he is, so Barrett decides to take on all 10 attacks to cover for Mash. Silva thinks he is mad, and he starts attacking with his Iron Fist spell. Barrett is brought to his knees after just 1 attack, but he manages to get back up. Silva keeps on attacking with his spell, and Barrett is continuously slammed by the iron pillars, while the girl and Mash watch on. After 9 attacks, Barrett is still standing, thinking about how the girl cried for his help. Silva prepares an extra strong attack for the final blow. The attack lands, and Barrett is knocked out. Silva starts to gloat, but Barrett somehow manages to get back up. He approaches Silva, saying that it's over, but he suddenly collapses, and Silva calls him an idiot. Barrett tells Mash to take the girl and run, but it's revealed that the girl is actually working with Silva, as she calls him cheesy, and says that she hates guys like him. Silva laughs at him for being so easily tricked, but his mouth is suddenly stuffed with a cream puff. Mash thinks they have gone too far, and decides to join the fight, saying that he will join the 10-hit challenge, telling Silva to bring it on. Meanwhile, we see his friends manage to take out a scorpion, but Lance wonders if Mash will be okay. Lemon thinks he will be fine, since he even beat the professor during their entrance exam, but Lance explains there are different types of magic users. There are white mages that are more academic and support-focused, and there are red mages that focus on combat, and Mash has really only gone up against white mages so far. He thinks that if Mash were to go up against any red mage past their first year, there would be many that would surpass him. Silva thinks Mash is just acting tough, and he goes on to say how he hates weaklings that act tough, seeing them as hypocrites, and he finds it amusing to crush their spirits. He notices his robe is slightly singed from Barrett's magic, so he prepares to attack him again, but Mash rushes at him, although he manages to counter. Mash is pushed back, and Silva starts to laugh, thinking he is far superior, mentioning how he earned 2 gold coins during his first year at the academy. He attacks Mash with his magic, and Mash gets pummeled, but he eventually catches Silva's spell, crushing it with his hand. Mash prepares to use tricep magic, and Silva thinks he is messing around. He keeps on attacking with his iron pillars, but Mash dodges and starts smashing right through them. He lands a punch on Silva, blowing him away, and he starts bleeding all over the place, wondering what is going on. He thinks his magic is top tier, even among the second-year students, as he launches a counterattack, but Mash smashes right through it, landing another blow on him. Silva is brought to his knees, and he starts to realize he can't win. He knows he can't take any more hits, but Mash suddenly backs away and takes a seat. Silva wonders what he is doing, and Mash tells him there are 8 more attacks to go. Mash gets back up, asking if he is ready for the next attack, but Silva knows he can't take any more, thinking he would die. He tries to think of a plan, and at that moment, an enormous scorpion suddenly appears. It has a star-shaped stone on its head, which means it's extra strong and valuable. Silva thinks he can get away while Mash is occupied by it, but Mash sends it flying with a single hit, saying he has no time to deal with it, and it drops its star-shaped stone. Silva starts freaking out, thinking Mash is a monster, but Mash calls off their fight, feeling bad for him, and he turns his attention to the girl. The girl starts panicking, and she turns on the waterworks, crying and saying that she was forced into helping Silva. But Mash tells her it's okay, and she thinks that men are just too easy to manipulate. But Mash believes in equality, as he slams her into the ground, and Barrett thinks there is something wrong with him. Mash meets up with his friends, and Lemon worries, seeing him all beaten up, but he says he is fine. Finn is impressed he even beat the Starstone Scorpion, revealing that it's worth 2 silver coins. Lemon thinks he should go to the nurse's office, and she checks up on Barrett as well. He is instantly charmed by her, and he starts freaking out, while she thinks he is just weird. Barrett ends up apologizing to Mash for getting him mixed up into things, and thanks him for his help. But Mash thinks he is acting weird, so Barrett immediately threatens to beat him, saying it took everything for him to be nice. Mash's pocket suddenly glows, as his silver coins have joined to become a gold coin. Lance mentions how they are being targeted, hearing that the Lang dorm is hunting them for their coins, explaining why Silva was after them. He explains that the Lang dorm is basically Slytherin, with people that value birthright and bloodlines, wanting to prevent the riffraff from joining the Bureau of Magic. He warns them to watch out for the Magia Lupus, the group of elite students from the Lang dorm. Mash mentions how he didn't even know they were separated by dorms, and Finn reminds him about the sorting ceremony. We see that right after they were accepted into the academy, they were sorted by the skeleton of a unicorn. The students grab onto its horn, and the skeleton is able to read their mind and sort them into the appropriate dorm. But when it was Mash's turn, it sees he only thinks about cream puffs. The skeleton panics, as this is the first time in centuries it has struggled to sort a student. It tries to look deeper into his mind, but there's really only cream puffs. And it just decides that people who love cream puffs must belong to the Adler dorm. Lance continues to explain that the Magia Lupus consists of the 7 top students of the dorm, and Silva must have been one of their lackeys. He warns Mash that since he has a coin, he needs to be extra careful, telling him to stick with people from their dorm. But despite this warning, Mash ends up getting lost while looking for his class. He finds a door to a room, and he thinks about how to open it, wondering if it is a push or a pull. Meanwhile, we see Silva as he apologizes for his failure. We learn that the leader of the Lang dorm is named Abel, and he holds a creepy-looking doll. He says that their mission is to cleanse the world of its impurities, and Silva begs for a second chance, but Abel calls him unworthy to even be a pawn, and he is turned into a doll. The doll gets up and proceeds to get in line, and Abel claims he is the only one worthy to become the next divine visionary, as he talks to his doll, which he calls Mother. But at that moment, Mash suddenly enters, apologizing for destroying another door, and he points out that Abel is weird for talking to a doll. Abel is aware that Mash has a gold coin, and he asks him why he is trying to become a divine visionary. Mash says he just wants to live peacefully with his family, but the current world won't accept him. Abel thinks he is ridiculous and unworthy, explaining how he wants to return the world to its rightful form. He says humanity was able to flourish, thanks to getting rid of the weak and people without magic, but he thinks society has started to become weak. He calls humans beasts by nature, so he plans to restore the natural order. But Mash thinks he just wants to live peacefully as well, not understanding what he was saying. Abel offers to let him go in exchange for his gold coin, but Mash just refuses. Abel attacks with one of his puppets, but Mash dodges, countering with his legs and ripping the strings attached to the puppet. The puppet turns back into Silva, and Mash thinks it wasn't much of a challenge. But he is suddenly grabbed by another puppet, which he finds much stronger than the previous one. The puppet grabs his coin and flicks it over to Abel. Mash is then thrown into a pillar, but he gets back up, apologizing for calling his puppet weak, but he suddenly steps on Abel's head, so he decides to take him to the infirmary. Abel wonders if he is giving up on his coin, but Mash says he is just prioritizing, but he declares he won't lose, no matter how strong they are. Mash leaves with Silva, but Abel feels something is off. He notices a missing button on his puppet, and he finds it in his hand instead of Mash's coin. One of the students can't believe what just happened. As the puppet was flicking the coin, Mash ripped its button off, spitting it out at an incredible speed, hitting the coin in midair, and sucking his coin back to himself. The girl can't believe it, and Abel finds Mash interesting. At the infirmary, Silva suddenly wakes up, wondering what happened, because he has no memory of anything after he was turned into a doll. But he sees Mash working out in front of him, and he realizes Mash must have saved him. He asks why Mash would save him when they were just enemies, but Mash says that when one is in trouble, they are all in trouble. Seeing he is okay, Mash decides to leave, and Silva reflects on his actions. Meanwhile, in Mash's dorm room, we see Lance and Barrett in a heated discussion. Lance comments on his new hairstyle, and Barrett says it's none of his business, but he thinks Lemon prefers guys with bangs. Finn wonders what they are doing in his room, but Barrett gets pissed off looking at Lance, thinking he's had an easy life thanks to his good looks. Lance wants to teach him a lesson, and the two prepare to fight, while Finn starts to panic, but Mash suddenly enters, telling them not to break things in his room, but Finn and Barrett find this ironic. Barrett suddenly takes out a gift, giving them some herb tea, as he says it's natural to bring a gift when visiting someone's place. Finn is surprised receiving it, thinking there might be more to Barrett than meets the eye. Mash enjoys a cream puff, thinking it's just another peaceful day, but Lance tells them not to get complacent, saying they need to strategize ways to get more coins. Lemon suddenly appears, saying there is big news, but when she sees she is the only girl, she fantasizes about being ravaged by them. But Finn bursts her bubble, and she snaps out of it, leading them over to a magic scale. The scale shows how many gold coins each dorm has, and we see the Lang dorm already has 15, while the Alder and Orca dorms only have 1 each. The Lang dorm has been taking coins from the other dorms, and all of the Alder upperclassmen who could stop them are away on internships. So at this rate, Lang will have the next divine visionary. The Orca dorm is too busy focused on their research, so it's up to them to stop the Lang dorm. The guys get fired up, thinking they just need to crush the Lang students. But Mash ends up in the owl hut, and we learn that the headmaster was forced to give him a punishment, so he has to clean the owl hut for a week. The owls peck at him, and he thinks about how they were just getting fired up. Lance decides to join him, saying that the Lang students might target him since he has a coin, so he can use that as a chance to hunt them, but Mash thinks he is just worried about him. Meanwhile, we see two Lang students approaching, preparing themselves to take Mash's coin. The owls keep pecking at Mash, and water suddenly appears underneath him, and he falls in, while Lance dodges a giant spinning blade. Mash struggles in the water, and the two Lang students introduce themselves as Andrew and Shinri, the 6th and 7th fangs of the Magia Lupus, challenging them to a fight, while wagering a gold coin. Mash says he's never swum, as he sinks into the water. Andrew transforms into a shark, and jumps into some water to go after Mash, leading Shinri to face off against Lance. Shinri attacks with his blade, but Lance dodges, thinking his magic to control a spinning blade is pretty weak compared to his gravity magic. But as he goes to cast his spell, he is distracted by the owls. He dodges another attack, and tries to focus on casting his spell, but he thinks of his sister, telling him not to harm the owls. Shinri attacks using double blades, and Lance notices the owls behind him, so he ends up getting hit by the attack. Shinri sees that Lance's wand is made out of magnolia, so he realizes Lance is from the Crown family who specializes in gravity magic. He heard that the son of the Crown family ran away from home, so he thinks it was because he was too weak, and he thinks he can feel superior for beating someone from the Crown family. Lance manages to use his spell, but it only makes a shovel fall to the ground. Shinri is disappointed with him and decides to finish him off, attacking with triple blades. But he thinks something is off, as he notices all the owls in one spot. Lance uses his gravity spell, crushing all of the blades, as he says the owls were in the way, so he moves them by dropping a shovel to cut open a bag of feed to draw all the owls into one spot. Shinri attacks using his strongest blade, but Lance easily crushes him with his gravity. Shinri can't believe that even though they both have double lines, there is such a big difference in their power. But Lance says that someone like him, who fights for themselves to feel superior, can't compare to him, who fights for the sake of saving his sister. Meanwhile, Andrew gloats about trapping Mash in his sea field, saying there is no way to escape. But Mash suddenly zooms past, and Andrew is shocked at the speed, not even able to see what it was. He thinks he must be imagining things, but Mash zooms right past him once again. He thinks about how Mash said he didn't know how to swim, but Mash says he got the hang of it, thanking him for helping him realize he could swim. Mash continues to swim all around him, and Andrew feels like he is the one getting hunted, so he uses another spell to transform into a more monstrous form, but Mash crashes into him, continuously hitting him as he swims. Andrew can't handle the blows, and Mash ends up escaping the sea field. Lance takes their coin, and they think they weren't that strong for being members of the Magia Lupus. Mash thinks they aren't a big deal, but suddenly, another one of their members appear. In an instant, he gets past the both of them, and Lance tries to use his gravity spell, but for some reason, his spell doesn't work. Mash immediately gets into his gear, charging with all his speed, but the man manages to dodge him. Lance wonders if he uses some kind of teleportation magic, but the man uses a magic bottle to collect his allies. The man bids them farewell, but says they will meet again soon, and Lance thinks that beating the Magia Lupus might not be so easy after all. As the masked man walks away, his mask cracks, and he thinks about Mash's attack. He thinks about how he was able to move so fast, even without magic, and he wonders if they are the same. At night, we see the man as he confronts a student from the Orca dorm for his gold coin. The student attacks with magma magic, but he is completely unfazed, and ends up easily defeating him, disappointed it ended so quickly. Elsewhere, we see a puppet, in the robes of a student, wandering through the school. The next day, Lance plans how they should deal with the Magia Lupus. We learn the location of each dorm is hidden, so Lance suggests finding the Lang dorm and going on the offensive to take their coins, but Mash is too busy making cream puffs. Lance gives him a new robe, and Mash notices it has a logo on the back. Lance tells him it's the mark of Adler, hoping it will remind him that he belongs to their dorm. Lemon suddenly bursts in, telling them something happened to Tom. They visit him in the infirmary, and find he looks completely drained. Tom says he has no memory of how he ended up in the infirmary, but notes that he normally lives his life at full throttle, so he usually falls right asleep and doesn't dream, but last night, He dreamt he was trapped in a dark box, feeling conscious, but he couldn't do anything. Lemon wonders how he is feeling, and Tom says he is okay, but it seems he is temporarily unable to use magic, feeling as though his magic energy has been drained from him. It's revealed there are a number of other students who are suffering from the same condition, and it seems to have started ever since the headmaster was called away by the Bureau of Magic. Lemon gives Mash a cream puff lucky charm, and makes him promise not to do anything too risky. She tells him to always keep it with him, so he can think of her, but she starts to lose it imagining him dreaming about her. Later that night, Lance and Mash wander around the school, looking for the Lang dorm. They are joined by Barrett and Finn, but Lance wonders why they are tagging along. Barrett is interested in getting coins, and Finn just doesn't want to be left alone in his room. As they explore, they end up seeing Lemon, and Barrett rushes over to her, but Lance notices something is off. Lemon's body twists and convulses, and she has been turned into a puppet. But the others manage to avoid her gaze. She continues on her way, and Barrett finds her cute even as a puppet. They decide to go after her, but when they turn the corner, they come to a dead end. Finn hears the crackling of her body, and Lance uses Revelio, which reveals a hidden door. Lance notes they need another spell to open the door, and Barrett tries using his fireballs to blow it open, but the door doesn't even budge, and he wonders how they are going to get in. But Mash grabs a suit of armor, throwing it down next to the door, and he is able to crack it open. He sticks the sword inside, using it as a lever, and he steps on it, blowing the door right out of the school, and creating a huge hole in the roof. Lance notes that the Magia Lupus is probably waiting for them inside, and Mash looks at his good luck charm, thinking he won't be able to keep his promise to Lemon. The group heads in, and they are surprised there was a hidden space under the school. They see light at the end of the tunnel, and they come out to an arena. A student named Gitsuku appears, and tells them they need to defeat him in order to continue. Lance is about to fight, but Barrett decides to step in, since he has a grudge against good-looking guys. Barrett rants about how easy his life must be, but Gitsuku thinks he's just jealous, and he transforms his wand into a rose whip, and the two prepare to fight. Meanwhile, at the Bureau of Magic, we see Headmaster Wahlberg talking to the director. Wahlberg knows he must have been called for a serious issue, and the director reveals that 6 of the most notorious criminals on death row have escaped their prison. The guards were all slaughtered, and it seems they had help from the one known as Innocent Zero. Back at the arena, Barrett attacks with his fireball, but it gets stopped by Gitsuku's vines. The vines lash out, and Barrett barely manages to dodge. Gitsuku wonders if they were the ones who beat Silva, and Barrett admits he got owned by him. But Gitsuku calls him a failure, because even though Silva was a double liner, he didn't use his power correctly, and Gitsuku claims he is far stronger, even as a single liner. However, Barrett is still confident he will win, as he attacks with another round of fireballs, but they just land around Gitsuku, creating marks around him. Barrett tells him to watch his step, saying they have 5 times the power as normal. Gitsuku thinks it's a lame trap, but Barrett is sure he will fall for it. Gitsuku wonders if Barrett has a way to move him into the trap, but he attacks with his rose whip. Barrett tries to defend himself, but his fireballs aren't very effective, and he gets hit by the vines. Barrett gets grabbed, and he even drops his wand. Gitsuku grows the thorns on his vines, stabbing Barrett with the spikes. Gitsuku tells him the fight is over, and goes to finish him off, but Barrett activates his trap card, causing a huge explosion from one of the marks. Gitsuku's wand is destroyed, and Barrett mentions he never said anything about stepping on the marks, revealing that his spell was actually a time bomb. He activates his remaining marks, and Gitsuku can't believe he lost to someone like him. The marks go off and cause a huge explosion. Finn congratulates him, and Barrett is excited to face another opponent, but Gitsuku poses even though he is defeated, and the group suddenly starts sinking into the ground. Mash tries to save his cream puff, and they all get sucked into the ground. They land on the floor below, and it seems they are all split up. Lance suddenly feels an overwhelming energy, and he is confronted by Maddle, the third fangs of the Magia Lupus. Barrett and Finn land together, and they come across Milo and Love, the 4th and 5th fangs. Love sees they are both only single liners, thinking they will be easy to deal with, and Finn thinks they are doomed, but Barrett tells him not to give up, thinking he has the power of the main character. Meanwhile, Mash lands in a dark room, wondering where his friends are. The room lights up, and he is greeted by the masked man, who introduces himself as Razor, the second fangs of the Magia Lupus. He compliments Mash on his movements from their last meeting, but he seems to have figured out that Mash can't use any magic, and Mash gets worried that someone has figured out his secret, but that's where